Friday, Donald Trump issued an executive order telling the nation's most important curator of history, the Smithsonian Institution, that they have to write history the way he wants it told, or else. Most people are interpreting this order to be directed at Black Americans, and they are particularly concerned that the history of African American enslavement be protected. And I certainly agree with these concerns. But I'm recording this TikTok because I want you to be aware that women should also be very much concerned right now about the protection of their own history. But we didn't know any of that until recently. In 1970, as the civil rights movement was maturing and the second wave of the women's movement was just getting started, it was realized by educators and historians and scholars that there was virtually no history that had been written about women or Black Americans or any other minority group. Instead, history had just been written as sort of a series of tales about the great man, which is to say the rich white males. The history of women in America is not a pretty story. Women were, until very recently in America, essentially an enslaved class. Now, before you get all huffy and insulted with me, let me just point out to you that there is more slavery today in the world than there has ever been in human history, and more than 70% of those who are enslaved are female. And that's because while the experience of Black males in American history is truly horrible, it is only one instance of an institution and a set of practices that are as old as human history and have been in place all over the world through most of our time as a species. And during that time, throughout all that time and all around the world, mostly slavery has applied to women. So a huge movement grew up among historians to start trying to write that history, to find out what it was and to get it out there for people to know. And it was only through this effort that we learned that not only were women not able to vote, but were not allowed their own legal identity, were not allowed to own property, were not allowed to control their income in the rare event that they were allowed to work outside the home for someone other than one of their male kin. We didn't know any of that before the 70s. The Smithsonian could have turned away from this new movement, but instead they pivoted to what they saw as their new responsibility, which was to document and archive and teach the histories of all Americans and not just the privileged white males. But I fear that the Trump administration is now trying not only to stop, but to erase the progress that was made. And really anyone who cares about the truth should be pushing back against this effort to erase the history of the most disadvantaged of our fellow citizens. This is something that women in particular should be pushing back, or we are going to find ourselves erased once again.